Welcome to the Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Creager. Todd has over 35 years of experience working with thousands of couples as a licensed therapist in his private practice. Todd shares his insights on this show. It's never too early to divorce-proof your marriage or too late to heal yourselves and have the relationship you truly want.
Hi everybody, this is Todd Creager. Today I want to talk to you about meditation. I've been talking about this and it is such a big part of my life. Today's topic is the power of meditation, how it positively impacts your brain and your health. That's a big topic. That's a tall order I just said, isn't it? How does meditation impact our brain and our health? And health includes physical health and emotional well-being as well. And I want to tell you that, I am a therapist and I call upon different tools to help people heal in their relationships, in their lives, in their health, mental health, physical health. But I also very about helping people be the best that they could be. So anything that a person can do that help them be the best they can be, I'm all for. And meditation is very high on my list. And one of the things I also do is I'm a professor and I teach a number of classes. One of them for grad students has a lot of neurobiology in it. So I'm pretty versed in discussing neurobiology. I'm not a neurobiologist, so I don't know lots and lots about the brain, but I know enough to be helpful. And I just want to give you a little bit of a brief discourse on the brain. Really, the outline of it. And we have in the deeper part of our brain, in the middle part of our brain, the limbic brain is then amygdala. The amygdala, A-M-Y-G-D-A-L-A, amygdala is the part of the brain that's the alarm system of the brain. It reacts to threat, it reacts to stress, and that, as well as some other parts of the right hemisphere of our brain, they are there to help us survive. They perceive threat and they're there to ring the alarms. And then when the amygdala gets triggered, like sees something as a threat, then it triggers a cascade of reactions. I won't give you too many terms, but the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, gets cranking, and that's what ultimately gives you cortisol, adrenaline, so that you can do the fight or flight to protect you. And then, I use this example a lot. If I'm walking down the street, let's say I'm taking a hike, that's even a more common example. I'm taking a hike with my wife. Actually, just today I was taking a hike with my wife, and I saw what looked like a snake, and I went, "Oh my God!" And of course, I was ready to run. Okay, the amygdala saw it, hit the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. I got some adrenaline and cortisol getting going, and I was ready to run. Until I realized it was this root of a tree that kind of can look like a snake. Now, as I continued going, kind of funny is then we saw what I thought was a snake again. But this time it was a snake. It was a snake. But it was a small snake, and for some reason I reacted much more strongly to the twig. But I digress. The thing about it is, in the second time, my amygdala did not react quickly, and I was pretty calm, and I saw it was a small snake, and it was going away from us, so that was fine. But that amygdala is there to protect us. The problem is that we oftentimes have our amygdala hijacking the rest of us for things that aren't really a threat. Now, what happened in the first moment when I saw the snake, which wasn't a snake, it was at some point the cortex and hippocampus, which is another part of the limbic brain. The cortex is the outer level, the part of the most evolved part of our brain, it sees things in more detail, and it was able to say, look, it's okay, it's not alive, it's not moving, well, it wasn't alive, it was a dead tree trunk, but it surely wasn't anything dangerous. And the hippocampus, along with the cortex, calms down the amygdala. The sympathetic nervous system calms down. The parasympathetic nervous system takes over, and it helps you calm. So that's a little bit of a neurobiological lesson in a nutshell. Other areas that are helpful in calming us down is the anterior insula, and some other parts of the brain. So now let's talk about meditation. So there's been a lot of research, or at least some research, on meditation, mostly mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness meditation is meditation where you're focused on your breath or something else, and that's your kind of your anchor focus. And then your thoughts, you go off because our minds continue to think. By the way, meditation is not about not thinking, because we keep thinking. We have a mind and we have a brain, and we think. But that you continue to pull yourself back to whatever it is, the breath, those kinds of things. So that's one kind of meditation, mindfulness meditation. Definitely been a lot of research on that. And there's been research on other kinds of meditations. And with modern medicine, they can now do brain scans. And so they've discovered when people are meditating, some of the things that happen in the brain. And what they found, and there'll be a lot more research in the future, but there's been some pretty good initial studies on this, is that meditation may lead to increases in gray matter density. The gray matter is the part that helps us think, not overreact, reason. It also increases the cells in the hippocampus. It can actually enlarge the hippocampus. Another thing I do is EMDR, which also does that, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. But it can literally enlarge the hippocampus, which, remember I said, that's one of the more evolved parts of the limbic part of the brain that can calm down the amygdala. The other frontal regions of the brain, right, these with the thinking, judgment, can increase during meditation. And the anterior insula I just mentioned also, and that it can actually increase the thickness of the cortex, which is the most evolved part of the brain. So increases in gray matter, and when we increase, especially the left hemisphere part of the hippocampus, which happens with meditation, they are all involved in learning, cognition, and memory. So it results in better retention of facts, more mindful behavior. We certainly have a choice. Like, if you are meditating, and meditation doesn't give you instant results, that's something you got to stay with it, and be open to knowing that the changes will happen over time. And the reason it is, let me just say this. I'm going to interrupt myself for a second. There's a term called neuroplasticity, and that is big term. Neuroplasticity means that the brain adapts to our environment. It adapts to what we do, especially on a regular basis. It will adapt to that. So, for example, if you're a pianist, play the piano, your brain is going to develop in ways that will help you be a phenomenal pianist. You practice it. I remember seeing a performance in the Orange County Performing Arts Center. Actually, it was Segerstrom Hall, which is in really 10 minutes from my house. And they have this amazing instrument that they had there. And they had this person playing this organ that involved both his hands and both his feet, often at the same time doing different things. And he's been doing this for many years. And I could only imagine what his brain connections are like. I mean, it's great. This is a man who will never get Alzheimer's. It's just no way. And so when a person is meditating, their brain adapts as well. That's why you have these changes that I just said. So they have found that they've done these research where a person meditates for 6 to 12 months, usually 20 to 30 minutes a day, which is my personal sweet spot. You can see changes in the brain structure as well as changes in function of the brain. Now, the other thing that meditation does, which I alluded to, is it calms down your sympathetic nervous system. That's what it does. So it takes more to get overwhelmed. It takes more to get stressed. So of course that induces a state of calm and emotional well-being. And of course, if you're living your life more calmly and your cortisol is contained most of the time, all your physiological symptoms will be at its optimum. Your immune system works best when you're calmer and your sympathetic nervous system isn't so activated. Your digestive system, even your sexual desire, and all these other systems that just work better, because when you are calm, you don't have those stress reactions and your body is not tensing up. So, you have more longevity, you age much more slowly because you're not living in that fight or flight. Because the sympathetic nervous system is deactivated. That is what happens when you meditate on a regular basis. So when you're meditating and you're deactivating your sympathetic nervous system and turning on the parasympathetic branch, studies have shown that over time this practice can help reduce pain, depression, stress, and anxiety. And it also can decrease emotional reactivity. So just imagine, for me as a couples therapist, how I have found it helpful for my couples to practice some kind of meditation where, because we trigger each other, and to be able to respond, it gives you that moment, that instant where you don't trigger the other person back. If you're triggered, you're able to, because your brain is changed through the meditation, you have a moment, you have options you didn't have before, and you might make a choice that de-escalates the conflict. So relationship health as well. I'm just trying to cover all the areas, and it's very powerful. I mentioned couples. I am doing meditation for couples program. I'm just stating it really briefly. You could easily find out all about it. It is one powerful program for couples. If only one of the couple does the program, it will help the relationship. If both partners do it, even better. And it is a program I'm very excited about. And you can see that, by engaging in this program that I lay out, and I'll talk more about it later, another time, it is, you get these benefits. You get the couple's benefits, but of course you get all the other benefits I'm talking about here. The brain benefits, the health benefits, the heart benefits, your immune system benefits. So I highly endorse meditating, and research is now behind it. And it's helped me. I could tell you a quick little story about me, even that is something I haven't even mentioned, and that is even it can help sometimes financially. I remember back when I was younger, it was in the mid-90s, and we had now a second child. My wife really wanted to stay home. I really wanted to stay home, but I wasn't making enough money, and I was stressed a lot because I was spending more than I was making with a family of four on my practice income at the time. And so I started to just meditate. I remember when a client canceled on me and I was stressed out because this is a new client. Now I wasn't, every client meant so much back then in those days that my amygdala hijacked the rest of me, like I talked about earlier, and it was like the end of the world. But it wasn't. So I meditated, and as I was meditating and breathing and focusing that time I was doing a mindfulness meditation. An idea just popped into my head out of nowhere. And I noticed that idea and I said, and I put it aside and I just finished my meditation. But then now the idea I'm about to tell you, I don't know if it would have happened if I wasn't meditating. I think I was too stressed in fight or flight that it wouldn't have come through. But in meditation, creativity happens as well. And the idea was, because I specialized then and still do in working with people that have low sexual desire, to start training physicians. And that moment, right after that, training physicians in low sexual desire, I called the first hospital when my kids were born. And just to make a long story short, 3 weeks later, I got a speaking gig for the physicians. Nobody called, nobody referred. It didn't really work out for that. But then I thought, I spoke to these physicians. It was a tough group, 85 physicians. It wasn't an easy group to talk to. I've spoken to physicians many, many times since, but that was my first time. But I started to train therapists in how to increase sexual desire when there's low sexual desire. And from that, I got a number of referrals. My practice shot up. And sure enough, I was making a decent amount of money so that I could provide for my family of four with my wife not having to go back to work. And I am absolutely convinced that the meditation was what gave me the space to come up with that creative idea that I had never thought about before. So just a little story I told before, but as you could see, I'm convinced. I'm not a believer. I'm convinced, and research is behind it now. So thank you for listening. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe for love.
That's it for today's episode of Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Creager. For free resources and materials, head over to toddcreager.com. Loved this episode? Head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.